Iranian drones used by Russian forces have inflicted significant damage on Ukrainian infrastructure. So to discuss this topic, we have three excellent speakers today: General Kenneth Mkenzi, Damian Spleeters, and Valerie Lindsay. And I would like to now invite General Mkenzi to start our presentations. General Mkenzi, it's all yours.
Mike, thanks very much. That was a great introduction. I'm excited to be part of this forum today because I think this is a very important topic, and it's becoming increasingly relevant, not only in the Middle East, which is my particular area of expertise, but as we see and as you have discussed, in Ukraine as well, where this technology has been exported and is actually having a battlefield effect. So I would like to take just a minute to talk about how drones fit into what Iran is doing, the history of it, and how we kind of got to this point. Drone warfare is an asymmetric approach to warfare. Typically, it's the tool of an entity, a state, that isn't able to field, modern fighter aircraft, other high-end capability systems. So you look for innovative alternatives. The drone, the land attack cruise missile that Iran uses, and some of their ballistic missiles all sort of fall into this niche. The strategy of a power that is overmatched in many domains, but seeks to find innovative ways to respond and to respond effectively. And also the ability to respond, particularly in the case of drones, that give you a measure of deniability about where the drone actually emanated from. And I'll talk about that here in just a minute. And the beauty of using drones is you can employ them across the entire spectrum of conflict. You can employ them at the very, very low level, in a deniable or a partially deniable way, or you can employ them on state warfare, where they can be used to pave the way for your other larger systems, such as your ballistic missiles that will follow. So this is where we are now in the Middle East. Iran has systematically built up its capabilities for drones, for land attack cruise missiles, and for ballistic missiles, to a point where now in the late spring of 2023, they effectively have an overmatch capability against their neighbors. And by overmatch, I mean the ability to attack a country to a degree where that country's defenses will be overwhelmed and they'll not be able to prevent the attack that's coming. Now, how that attack would develop, the Iranians have a lot of choices here because they built the equivalent of combined arms warfare in the air. Your drones can go in first. You look for the radar systems, maybe Patriot radars, maybe other radars that you look to take down with the drones. Because frankly, a Patriot is not optimized to shoot at a drone. You can do it, not the way we'd prefer to do it. And with really, really small drones, it does actually become very difficult to do. Now, we have other ways to defend our Patriots: kinetic systems, gun systems, even electronic systems that we employ. But right now, we're lagging behind the drone's ability to penetrate us. The whole history of warfare is one of offense and defense. And right now, the advantage is with the drones. They have an advantage that we have not yet been able to completely counter. So this war would be a war of fires. Military targets, non-military targets, all of these things would be in play. And that's a significant difference in Iranian capability. And I'll tell you, the Iranians are actually, they've proven to be pretty good and effective. The attack that Mike referenced on the Saudi oil facilities in the fall of 2019 was exquisitely accurate and very, very effective. The attack against our forces at Al-Assad in January 2020 using ballistic missiles was in fact highly accurate. Those missiles hit within tens of meters of their targets. And the only reason that we didn't take loss of life was we had the ability to make some adjustments before those missiles were fired. But the Iranians actually hit with remarkable accuracy the targets that they shot at. So I actually have great respect for the Iranian drone, cruise missile, and ballistic missile program. They have made great sacrifices over the last 10 years in order to build these systems up. In fact, I would go so far to say, and this is my opinion, not related to the U.S. government or anyone else, I believe these capabilities actually reflect the true crown jewels of Iran. I think these capabilities are at least as important to them as the nuclear program, because the nuclear program is a contingent future development of a nuclear weapon. They could sprint to it. They could go to it very quickly. But today, this afternoon, they actually have the ability to hurt their neighbors very badly should they choose to do that. And I think it's worth remembering as we consider the totality of their program. I think it's a very concerning thing.
The first point is just to acknowledge the obvious, which is that export controls and sanctions are not going to eliminate Iran's ability to produce drones. And that shouldn't be their objective. As Damien mentioned, UAV technologies are far too widely available, commercially available, and Iran's drone industry is just too mature and well diversified thanks to the investments over time that General Mkenzi mentioned. So you have a number of large state-run entities under the Ministry of Defense and the IRGC, Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps, that are responsible for sort of designing and manufacturing drones. You have a growing number of private companies inside Iran that are involved in procurement or involved in providing services to these larger state-run entities. And then you have myriad firms overseas and individuals that help Iran evade sanctions and that help with Iran to obtain UAV components. And then again, domestically, you have a deep knowledge base for ongoing research and development on drones within the Iranian universities. So that's kind of the lay of the land in terms of the various entities that are involved in the program, and explains, I think, one of the reasons why the program is as advanced as it is today.
We find usually quite a few dozen chips in drones, depending on the models. Those Shaheds will have, I think, about maybe 100 in them. We'll have Russian drones that are more complex. So it really, really depends. I think I would echo General Mkenzi's kind of admiration for, the let's say proficiency, ingenuity of the Iranian drone program, especially comparing, those used in Ukraine with those that we found previously in the Middle East, seeing, how quite complex they are and, well thought, and caveating that we have a small sample in Ukraine, only about 20. We've already found variation and adaptations that, tell us that, there are people there that really think about those things and can really, do it well. So that's pretty admirable, I think, in that sense, technically speaking.
So let me begin with the attack in September 2019 against Aramco. That was the Iranians had a good plan. They knew where air defense systems were. They knew had a generally good understanding of the fans of those radars, and they were able to waypoint the drones. And a waypoint is this: it's a thing that's very attractive in a drone. You can tell it to fly to a different point on the earth and turn to fly to a different point. So they don't fly a straight line. They can fly a dogleg course. They can fly a variety of complex turns to get to the target, and that's what they did in this case, and they did it very well. Sometimes sometimes the adversary has a good day, and this was good planning by them, and it was an extremely well executed attack. Now, when you go back and you look at archival data on some of these radar sites that are out there, they saw it, but they didn't know how to interpret it, because sometimes a drone that's flying low is not readily interpreted by a radar operator at a remote site. So you learn from that. But in the case of the Aramco attack, it was a very well executed attack. And you may recall that I think there was some discussion initially about the Houthis claiming responsibility for it. And so that was part of the large Iranian design. The evidence was significant and overwhelming that they were of Iranian origin. But I would just note to you, and I'm glad we were talking about the way to find responsibility for these attacks. Sometimes nations don't want to know actually who was behind that attack. They'd rather to have it be hang out there in limbo. And we've seen that a couple of times in attacks in the Middle East, when perhaps it's easier to blame the Houthis or easier to blame some other third party rather than to frankly admit that the evidence is forensically is overwhelming that it was an Iranian attack. So now, how do you learn from that? How do you get better? So you're absolutely right. We are on the wrong side of the cost imposition curve. We are spending lots of money to shoot down very, very cheap platforms that are coming.